This video shows you how to mount the 4U RAID subsystem into the rack. Please carefully follow the procedures in order to avoid accident or wrong installation. After you open the rail box, you will see two rail assemblies, the screws, and the nuts. Please check the contents of the box. A Phillips screwdriver is needed in the installation. Here is a standard server rack, which is 42U in height and 1400 millimeters in depth. Before you install the 4U high-density RAID subsystem into your server rack, please prepare your server rack. We suggest that the depth should be at least 1200 millimeters. This step shows you how to insert the nuts properly in the front side of the server rack. The first step is to define where in the server rack the 4U RAID subsystem will be installed. Here's the example for a 4U height stick from 20U up to 23U. On the other front right side, the same location will be needed to install the rails. Then take M5 nuts and insert them from the rear side of rack post. The two nuts must be inserted on topmost holes of 4U height, and one nut must be inserted on the second hole from the bottom of 4U height. Do the same thing on the front right side. We have just finished the first part of rail installation. This is the rail assembly. This is the front end side and this is the rear end side. On the rear end side, there is a lock lever and two latches. You can also refer to the name inscribed in the rail assembly, which one is the front side and rear side. In this example, the latches on the rear side of the rail assembly must be inserted in 21U height. Press and hold the lock lever and then insert the latches in the rear rack post on 21U height, and then release the lock lever. On the front side, press and hold the lock lever and then insert the front side of the rail assembly in the rack post. Adjust the lock lever so that it goes into the holes of the rack post, and then release the lock lever. The rail assembly will be automatically locked on the rack post. On the other side, repeat the same steps. Press and hold the lock lever, insert it in the rear rack post, and then release the lock lever. On the front side, press and hold the lock lever and then slide it so that the two latches goes into the holes of the rack post. Release the lock lever and the rail assembly will be locked into the rack post. Before installing the 4U high-density RAID subsystem, the power supplies and disk drives must be removed from the enclosure to make the weight of the enclosure lighter. To remove the power supply, loosen the thumb screws on the sides of the power supply and then carefully pull out the power supply. Do the same on the other power supply. If there are disk drives, it is also necessary to remove them. In this example, there are no drives in the enclosure. Before installing the RAID subsystem into the rack, pull the middle rails out from each assembly toward the front side. Make sure the middle rails are aligned properly. Two persons must hold the handles on the side of the enclosure. Carefully lift the enclosure and then align the rear end side of middle rails to the rail assembly. Slowly slide the enclosure into the server rack. Make sure to hold the enclosure firmly in level position while inserting the middle rail into the rail assembly. Keep holding the enclosure while we move inside the rack. When part of the enclosure is already inside the rack, close the rear handle and continue to slide the enclosure. Support is still needed on the bottom side of the enclosure so that it will not drop down. Continue to slide the enclosure and close the handles. Press the blue locks on each side of and continue to slide the enclosure until it is totally inserted inside the server rack. Use 2 M5 screws to lock the top cover on the rack post. Note the screwdriver will need to pass through the corner hole of front panel for the two upper corner holes on both sides. Then slide in the enclosure and use 4 and 5 screws to lock the enclosure into the rack post, 1 screw in each corner. After enclosure is mounted and fixed on rack post, reinsert the 2 power supply modules from the rear end of chassis and tighten the thumb screws for each power supply. This part is about how to install the cable management arm or CMA on the rear side of enclosure. Before you install the CMA, check the components of the CMA set. There should be 1 piece of CMA body, 4 pieces of rail extension, and screws. First, you need to use the 2 pieces of rail extension to screw it on the chassis as extension part of inner rail. There are 2 screws need to be tightened on each side of enclosure. Please note that if the rail subsystem is already installed in the server rack and the CMA is to be added, the rail subsystem must be removed first from the server rack before installing the 2 pieces of rail extension. After installing the 2 pieces of rail extension, move the rail subsystem enclosure back into the server rack. After the enclosure is mounted on the rack post, here we are going to assemble the cable arm module into the chassis. Go to the rear end of enclosure and pull it outward a little bit. Take the 2 other pieces of rail extension and insert it onto the middle rail as extension part. Make sure it is fixed firmly on the rail and there will be a click sound. Install these 2 pieces of rail extension on both sides of the middle rails. Check the direction of CMA body. Is the rear left and is the rear right side. Insert the rear left side into the rear left middle rail. Then insert the rear right side. There will be a click sound when it is fixed firmly. Take the other end of CMA body and insert it on the rear right middle rail. Try and see if it is fixed firmly. Then the cable arm installation is finished. You can slide the enclosure in and out to check if the cable management arm works. Before you start, prepare the disk drive side brackets. Remove them from the dummy disk by pushing the upper side of dummy disk. There are dongle board module, side bracket, and screws to be installed on the hard drive. Tighten first the slotted flathead screw on the upper part of this drive. Place the shorter bracket on one side of the disk drive and secure them with 2 screws. Place the other longer bracket and use 3 screws to secure it on the other side of the disk drive. After installing the slotted flathead screw, install the dongle board module on the SATA connector of the hard drive. Place the shorter bracket on one side of the disk drive and secure it with 3 screws. Place the other longer bracket and use 3 screws to secure it on the other side of the disk drive. Please note the proper position of the brackets on the sides of the disk drive. Prepare the hard drive and the disk tool. Place the hard drive carefully in the disk slot. Press and hold the hard drive. Then use the disk tool, which is included in the package, and turn counterclockwise to fix this hard drive. When you would like to remove the hard drive, pull the enclosure outward with top cover open. Use the disk tool to loosen the slot lock. Then turn open the hook on disk tool and use the hook on the flathead screw of hard drive. Then pull it upward to remove the hard disk.